What dangerous thesis did the UW administration endeavor to silence? They wanted to silence the apparently controversial opinion, our topic this evening, that murder is wrong. Specifically, that it is wrong to murder little innocent babies through abortion. It shows you just how far our culture and our education system have fallen that such a thesis need be defended at a university. The belief that murder is wrong should not have to be explained at an elementary school, much less at a university. But as our culture and our education system have decayed, we have become confused even about basic matters of right and wrong. For most of American history, the intentional killing of unborn babies was illegal. From the colonial period through the middle of the 19th century, when abortion was surgically impossible and chemically was quite dubious, it was not a major public issue. In that era, obviously long before ultrasounds, people did not know exactly when or how conception occurred. They kind of knew the basics of it, they knew the birds and the bees and everything, but they didn't know the precise details. Inasmuch as they did know those details, and insofar as it was addressed by the law, abortion was outlawed. By the turn of the 20th century, abortion was a felony in every state. The legal distinction between early abortion and later-term abortion also began to disappear as scientists came to understand that the first movement of the unborn baby, which is known as quickening, did not represent a particularly significant moment in the development of that baby. One can understand why earlier generations might have thought that quickening would be morally and legally significant. But scientific advancements have revealed details about human physical development that thinkers such as Aristotle just simply would not have been able to know. As our understanding of when and how conception occurs changed, our laws changed to reflect it. Simple enough. A couple of decades into the 20th century, with the rise of the eugenics movement that sought to exterminate disfavored populations such as the mentally handicapped and certain racial minorities, Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League, which within a couple of decades would become Planned Parenthood. By the late 1960s, after decades of activism, the pro-abortion movement finally successfully decriminalized abortion, sort of, in some way, very limited circumstances, rape, incest, threat to the health of the mother, and there in only one state, that was Colorado. Several states soon followed. By the early 1970s, some states, such as New York, had gone even further, legalizing abortion up to 24 weeks, which still, obviously not the entirety of the pregnancy, but that was a lot further than the other states. Then in 1973, the Supreme Court discovered a previously unidentified constitutional right to murder babies. That supposed right seems to have eluded the men who wrote the Constitution, as well as the 9 generations of Americans who lived between the ratification and Roe v. Wade. Perhaps the abortion clause of the Constitution was written in some secret code known only to 20th century liberals. We don't know. We don't know. Whatever the case, in 1973, the court pretended that the Constitution granted a right to kill babies through abortion. 19 years later, as the pro-life movement picked up steam and Roe began to crumble under its own incoherence, the court revisited the question in a case called Planned Parenthood v. Casey. Now, in Casey, the court made an even stranger ruling than it had during Roe. In Casey, the court decided that the practical outcome of Roe, which is the license to kill unborn babies in the first trimester and sometimes in the second trimester, but usually not in the third trimester, that ruling was sound, basically, but the reasoning around the decision was not sound. So the court threw out the reasoning. The court threw out Roe's trimester system and changed the reasoning to argue that women still had a right to kill their kids, but only until the baby was viable, after which point they might still kill their kids, but it depended on state law. Maybe. Pretty much that's how Casey came out. The Casey decision changed some of the other constitutional reasoning as well, but the practical implications, which were now even more legally and constitutionally preposterous, remained unchanged until the Dobbs decision just a couple of years ago, which happily overturned Roe and Casey. And great news, Best court decision of my lifetime, without question. 49 years in the making. It returned our law and our jurisprudence to what had been the norm for most of American history, when abortion was not considered a right and usually was simply outlawed. Okay, that is 300 years of abortion history in the United States, all in about 10 minutes. And I mention all of it because the pro-abortion crowd wants to pretend that infanticide is a constitutional right deeply embedded in the American political tradition. And it just isn't. Simple as that. In fact, the license to abortion is an aberration that even its most significant defenders have admitted is legally quite dubious, very, very sus. Justice Harry Blackmun, who was the most liberal justice on the court, wrote the majority decision in Roe v. Wade. He admitted in writing that the court's logic was more or less gobbledygook. While some justices favored the viability standard that would come to be adopted in Casey, some of them favored it all the way back in 1973, Justice Blackmun pointed out the pointlessness of quibbling over the precise moment at which infanticide becomes acceptable. You will observe, Blackmun wrote, that I have concluded that the end of the first trimester is critical. This is arbitrary, but perhaps any other selected point, such as quickening or viability, is equally arbitrary. And of course it is arbitrary, as must be any selected point other than conception, which by definition marks the beginning of the individual human life. Some of the sillier abortion advocates today will sometimes claim that a baby in the womb does not constitute a human life. They will say, "It isn't a baby, it's a fetus." Because they don't understand that the word fetus is a Latin word that means offspring. In this case, the offspring of human beings, also known as a baby. They don't know that. They usually don't. They probably didn't even study Spanish. I don't think they know Latin. They might say sometimes that the baby at the early stage of development is not a baby. You see, it's a zygote or a blastula. They'll make the baby sound like a Pokemon or something. Of course, we have all sorts of different terms to denote different stages of human development. Zygote, blastula, sure. Also, embryo, infant, toddler, kid, teenager, adult, old man, geezer, many others in between. All the stages are distinct. Teens can do certain things that babies cannot do, like speak, for instance. Adults can do certain things that teenagers cannot do, like control themselves in some of the time, not all of the time. Old men, oddly enough, are actually kind of similar to toddlers because the circle of life, goes around like a circle. You kind of crawl around and you don't speak as much. But in any case, these are different stages, and nevertheless, no particular stage between the beginning and the end either confers or negates our humanity. We are human the whole time. We know that babies in the womb are human because they have human parents. If a woman gave birth to a platypus, that would be a great cause for concern. If I were that woman's husband, I would have a lot of questions. But that would not happen because that is not how reproduction works. We know that babies in the womb are human, and we also know that they're alive. We know that they're alive because they exhibit all the characteristics that we ascribe to life. Cellular organization, growth, the potential to reproduce, adaptation, and on and on. All the characteristics that you learned about in your middle school science class. The baby in the womb is obviously human, just as the baby in the womb is obviously alive. If the baby were not alive, there would be no cause for an abortion, obviously. They all know this. There would be nothing to terminate. Liberals sometimes try to deny these facts, or at least to soften them with euphemisms. They do this because, even as they advocate for abortion, they recognize its moral repugnance. They don't want to admit what everyone with a modicum of sense and honesty knows, which is that abortion is a type of homicide. The feminist writer Naomi Wolf discussed this fact bluntly in the mid-90s. She wrote, quote, Abortion should be legal. It is sometimes even necessary. Sometimes the mother must be able to decide that the fetus, in its full humanity, must die. Woolf was wrong, obviously, in her conclusion, but at least she was honest. Abortion, by definition, ends a human life. So, having examined and refuted the historical, legal, constitutional, and anthropological arguments for abortion, having cleared away all of the muck that usually obscures the abortion debate, we arrive at the final question. Is it moral? Is it okay? Is it moral to commit murder? Is it moral to kill an innocent little baby in the womb for any reason? The first question we need to answer is whether it's ever okay to kill at all. Forget people for a moment. Is it okay to kill an animal? Is it okay to kill a plant? Plants are alive, and the liberals hug them sometimes. You know, they hug the trees, and they cry when they get cut down. I, for one, think it's perfectly fine to kill a plant, just as I think it's perfectly fine to kill an animal. Our bodies are made to eat animals. If you want to eat an animal, you usually have to kill it first. Unless you're like those Korean ladies on TikTok with the octopus that's kind of I've only seen a couple of them, but they're extremely creepy when they're kind of crawling on the, anyway. Don't look it up. I think we're banning TikTok now anyway, so forget about it. Yeah, that's all for the best. Generally, most of the time, if you want to eat an animal, you have to kill it first, which is fine. Animals are not rational. They are naturally part of the human diet, and there's nothing wrong with using a thing for its purpose. Ironically, abortion supporters are much more likely to object to killing animals than pro-lifers are. You will not meet many conservative vegetarians. You will meet some, but not a lot. And yet virtually every purple-haired vegan that you ever meet will support abortion. They oppose the killing of irrational animals as inhumane, but they support the killing of human babies as a human right. Go figure. These liberals will support laws like the Bald Eagle Protection Act. If you kill a bald eagle in the United States, actually, forget about that. If you destroy a bald eagle egg, if you in any way agitate a bald eagle, if you disturb a bald eagle's nest when the eagle is not there, you can be thrown into prison for a year and fined $100,000 for your first offense, and then it will only get worse subsequently. You kill a baby, though, the liberals will throw you a party and call you a hero. So much for the animals. Next question. Is it okay to kill bad guys? It depends. It seems to me perfectly fine for the government, the civil authority, to kill certain bad guys. That has been the moral and legal tradition in our civilization, and in every civilization, for all of history. The civil authority has care of the community. When someone poses a threat to the community, the civil authority, which does not bear the sword in vain, has always been understood to have the temporal power to enforce its laws. Here, once again, the pro-abortion people disagree. The pro-abortion crowd, the liberals, in recent years have tended to argue against capital punishment. They lobby to get even the very worst criminals, the psychosexual, sadistic serial killers, all of them, off the hook. They seek to abolish the death penalty. So for those keeping score so far when it comes to killing, I, a pro-lifer, am in favor of killing plants and animals and criminals convicted of capital offenses. But I am not in favor of killing innocent little babies. The pro-abortion people tend to favor the opposite. They would not kill the chickens. They would not kill the mass murderers. They very much would kill the innocent little babies. How about the private killing of bad guys? Not the government, just individuals. Vigilantes, private people hunting down their personal enemies. Is that okay? My view, call me crazy, call me traditional. I think that's not okay, because while it is lawful to kill an evildoer to defend the community, that right belongs to him who has charge of the community's welfare. To borrow an analogy from St. Thomas Aquinas, Just as it belongs to the surgeon to cut off the decayed limb of his patient, so too the care of the common good belongs to the persons entrusted with public authority. We don't want randos going around chopping people's limbs off, and likewise, we don't want randos going around killing their perceived enemies. Again, you will not be surprised to find out the liberals disagree. When BLM spent 8 months pillaging and murdering all around the country, the most prominent liberals, some of the most prominent abortion supporters in the country, the current Vice President of the United States, staffers for the current President of the United States, they raised money to bail the criminals out of jail. In recent years, liberals have openly called to defund the police, even to abolish prisons. They've allowed vigilantes to shut down highways. They've encouraged vigilantes to threaten and terrorize Republican elected officials. You might remember a few years ago, Congress Lady Maxine Waters shrieking about how the random Democrats need to go chase down the Republicans in public life and get back on them and push back. And I can't do a good Maxine Waters impression, but Hillary said much the same thing, as did many prominent Democrats. Is it okay to kill a person in self-defense? I think most reasonable people would say yes. Reasonable people, us in this room, but not everybody. If a guy threatens me, and the only way to stop that threat is to kill him, I think I would be justified in doing so. Frankly, my intention would not even necessarily be to kill him. My intention would be to save my own life, the secondary effect of which is to kill the aggressor. Totally justified. The liberals, yet again, say the opposite. The liberals often criticize laws that defend self-defense. The liberals criticize stand your ground laws, for instance. They obviously criticize the Second Amendment. In practice, they deny the right to self-defense. If you are still keeping score, the libs oppose killing animals, murderers, and people who are trying to kill you, but they support killing their private enemies as well as innocent little babies. The left's position on killing seems to get weirder and weirder the more we examine it. How about killing yourself? I'm not suggesting it. I'm just asking, do you think that is okay? Is suicide ever okay? My answer, the traditional answer, is no, because it is contrary to nature. It is contrary to the natural inclination to preserve yourself. It is contrary to self-love and charity. Also, it harms the community, to which we have an obligation. This is why we call suicide a selfish act, an act that traumatizes, often for life, the loved ones of the people who do it. Also because life is a gift given to us by God, which we have neither the ultimate ability to create nor the right to end. The libs, yet again, say otherwise. Liberals throughout the West are presently attempting to legalize suicide and even to commercialize suicide by selling tickets to suicide pods and various euthanasia poisons. Don't kill an animal, do kill yourself. So that could be the slogan for 2024 for the Democrats. Now, finally, we arrive at the core question. Is it ever okay to kill the innocent? Obviously, we would not be killing the innocent in self-defense. We would not be killing the innocent because they committed a crime. And we would not be killing the innocent to protect the common good because, one, they're part of the community, they're part of that, and two, because they actually advance the common good, because they're innocent. Therefore, seems to me, it is never acceptable under any circumstances to kill the innocent, including and especially the most vulnerable among us, innocent little babies. If I have made some error in my reasoning, please, I beg you, enlighten me. Teach me what I have missed. We are going to have a Q&A after this. You are more than welcome to teach me something that I have missed. I know the rain scared away some of the protesters, but some of you, I don't want to make judgments, judge a book by its cover, but it's from the hair color and stuff, maybe a few liberals in the room. If you disagree, please convince me. I don't think I've made an error in logic. Far as I can tell, abortion is totally indefensible, historically, legally, anthropologically, and morally. Because it is wrong to commit murder. Simple as. In an earlier and saner age, we could have settled that question in pretty much those 5 words. Today, however, we're more confused. We've made an idol of choice, a false kind of liberty. and we prefer that idol to reason. We mistakenly think that it'll make us better off. Ignore our reason, just kind of do whatever you want. If it feels good, do it, man. That's supposed to make us better off, because we forget that when society rejects reason, it necessarily conducts politics through irrational violence. It's inevitable. We see this kind of violence increasingly around us, and it imperils not only our liberty, but also our very lives.